And hello, everyone, and welcome back to Cyrus Webb Presents here on Amazon Live. I'm your host, Cyrus Webb. Glad you all could join us once again. Also, we are simulcasting our broadcast today. So, also want to welcome those tuning in on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitter, or X. Glad you all could be with us as well. For those joining us on Amazon, if you guys are new to us here on the platform, make sure you guys hit that follow button. You'll see it either here in this corner or down below. Also, you will see some of the books by our next guest. We're excited to welcome back Dr. Velma Bagby to our broadcast today. We have highlighted in the carousel the book we're going to be spending the majority of our time on today, which you guys see here, called The Wrong Catch. But she is the author of the Catch series. If you guys caught us in our series that we're doing here on Amazon Live, last week we discussed this book that kicked it all off, The Catch No One Wants. And now we're in book number 2. We're going to talk to Dr. Velma not only about what it's been like for her to create these stories and these characters, but also to be able to entertain and also, I think, to educate a little bit as well. We welcome your questions and comments. So if you guys have those, we do have the chat open on all of our platforms. So feel free to be able to join us there. But Dr. Velma, welcome back to the broadcast.
Thank you, Cyrus. I'm glad to be here this afternoon.
Hey, the pleasure is definitely always mine. Glad to speak with you. A lot for us to cover, and I want our audience to know. I told Dr. Velma I gave her a heads up today on what I want to be covering in today's show.
Yes.
So it will not be a surprise to her either. But Dr. Velma, I when I was prepping for this show, and as we've been doing this series, even myself, I'm thinking of new things in each book that I have not talked to you about, so we can bring out to our viewers here. What has it been like for you to have readers bring out different things and you're like, oh yeah, that is in that book too?
Well, it's been fun because that tells me they were really paying attention to what they were reading, and some of the details that's been shared with me was really interesting. So I love it. I love the responses.
Manswell's joining us on the Facebook side. Hello to you, Manswell. He
Manswell.
says hello to you as well. I think, for a lot of people too, Dr. Velma, as they are reading these books, and we talked about this as we kicked off this series last week with The Catch No One Wants. I'm going to go ahead and highlight it back in the carousel on the Amazon side. And I do want you guys to know on Amazon, Dr. Velma has all the books, all 3 books in the series on sale for Kindle for only 99 cents right now. Or you can get the paperbacks like I do. But I'm highlighting now the first book in the series there, which is The Catch No One Wants. Adrienne, good to be able to see you as well. Glad you could be able to join us on Facebook. Also, we have Angela Anderson of Angela Anderson Presents joining us as well over on Facebook. She says hello as well. So when it first kicked off with this book, and we talked about this last week, Dr. Velma, you kind of gave us a father and daughter and how he's been able to help her navigate when it comes to relationships, especially when it comes to her picks for marriage. Hey, Tina, good to be able to see you on Facebook. The whole gang is showing up over on the Facebook side. So I want to talk about this, Dr. Velma, because I thought this was interesting when I was prepping for today. These matters you discuss in the book are very serious, but you're able to write about them in a way that is entertaining, as I just mentioned, but also I think will make people really get into the story. What has that been like for you to kill 2 birds with 1 stone, to be able to get people brought in by the drama of it, but also let them leave with the lessons of it?
Well, we've had this conversation before about how I was able to weave the stories in a way that was very similar to the parables that Jesus used. They were never threatening. It wasn't about being preachy. It was really just creating stories where people can discover themselves in them. And then in that story, find some tips and tools that will help them along the way. Decisions are made up to them as to whether or not they want to make any changes. So it was important. And there's a common theme in this particular book. All the men in this book are narcissistic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And we're going to talk more about that when we get into LM here, or a largemouth, a little bit later, Dr. Velma. And so as we kind of go through, as I mentioned last week, we talked about The Catch No One Wants. We were able to see the journey of Veronica with her father, Grayson, in that book. Now with this book that we're talking about today, The Wrong Catch. It's a really interesting dynamic because now you are literally taking us into a session where women are being able to not only to find out about these fish stories themselves, but also to hear about examples and hear from individuals who've been on both sides of it. So talk to us about what it was like for you writing this book.
Well, in response to the women in the book, they found out about his Pastor Grayson's daughter, Veronica, and how successful she was after having those sessions with him, that intervention that he did in book 1. So people began asking Pastor Grayson for more information. They wanted to know what he taught. Now, keep in mind that he had been teaching a singles ministry in his church, but he realizes that he has to now take a different approach, like he did with his daughter. It wasn't working for her, which is what made her go out and try to discover a husband on her own, and use the wrong pattern of just dating as many men as she could. And so he realized that for one, he had to change his approach. And then secondly, it just took off. So many people wanted to know more. And so this is why he hosted the women's conference in book 2, so that he can then talk to more women about some of the same things he did with his daughter, but he took a different approach. He had female presenters come in and tell the other group what were some of the difficulties they had and share their own experience.
Yeah, love that. Miss Queenie, hello to you. She's joining us on Facebook. She says hello as well. Dr. Velma. So that brings us to this point, because I thought too, these women that are in the wrong catch that Grayson is speaking to, they have something in common with a lot of us, Dr. Velma, and that is we can readily see where somewhere else went wrong. We can't necessarily see where we went wrong. So what was that dynamic like for you to have them giving a lot of amens and, oh, how could you, or what? Not me. It couldn't have been me in that situation, when a lot of them actually had been in these same situations that they were hearing about.
Absolutely. Can you imagine if Pastor Grayson had presented all of these things on his own as a man? So it comes across more serious and real when another woman gets up and said, this is what I fell into. This is what he's trying to help you not to do. But here's what happened to me. So it comes across differently with the speakers being the women who actually went through some of the experiences where they didn't apply some of the principles he's taught. And so it was really interesting. I enjoyed it. This is actually one of my favorites in terms of the writing. But my favorite, even though you're not going to talk about it, were the twins, the Bass twins in the book, because these guys got in the habit of dating the same women, and the women didn't know they were dating 2 different men. So they used twinning at a whole new level. But in all cases, these are all narcissistic men. And what's interesting is what made these women gravitate towards men like this.
Yeah, and that is it. And we're going to talk about, for those who have the book, I'm going to go ahead and highlight it now in the carousel. Let's see. Oh boy, I'm going to say this wrong. Is it pronounced Nathan Angel on Amazon Live? Let me know if I'm mispronouncing that. They said hello to you, Dr. Velma. Hello. I think it's pronounced Nathan Angel on Amazon. I'm going to go ahead and highlight the wrong catch, though, because that's the book Dr. Velma and I are going to spend the majority of our time talking about. As I mentioned, all the books in this series, there's 3 of them. All of the Kindles are on sale right now for only 99 cents. So you guys can get those, or you can get, as I have, the paperback for $11.99 of the wrong catch. I'm going to go ahead and highlight it in the carousel. Now, I want to actually read something, Dr. Velma, for our audience in 2 places in this particular book. Oh, it's Myra. Myra, hello to you.
Oh, hey, Myra.
Good to be able to see you. Okay, so this is for those who have their copy of the book. It's in chapter 1. I'm going to start off, though, on page number 10. That's where we're going to start in talking, and then we're going to skip over to pages 26 and 27. But here there's an introduction that's done by Grayson. And so I want to read this, kind of set the stage, and we're going to talk about it, Dr. Velma. So again, for those who have the paperback edition on page number 10, after a few minutes, the room turned silent as they waited for the surprise speaker. Soon, one lady in the group got up and walked toward the podium. Once at the podium, she placed her hands on the side of it as if she were hanging on for dear life. Her nervousness was obvious. You could hear the slight tremble in her voice. Hello, everyone. All praises to God for being the head of my life. I'm Cheryl Alexander, and I stand before you with a healed heart from my experience dating one of the Bass brothers, a trophy fish. And then this is the part I want to talk about, and then we're going to fast forward. This is what Cheryl was saying to the audience, everybody. And I want you guys to think about who she was.
Yeah.
As a professional, I admit to being slightly embarrassed for allowing myself to date this guy. And this is the first time I'm talking about it publicly. I promise to be transparent as possible. My heart is that you benefit from what I share, so please ask me questions. Nothing is too personal. You might call this a divine appointment because of the timing of today's session and my recent experience. Now, she goes on to talk to them, Dr. Velma, about her
Uh-huh.
experience with LM in
Hmm.
the book. And as it's very interesting as they're going on, she's talking about the way LM would talk to her and the things he would ask. And I want to skip to page 26 because as she's talking, she's getting some response from the audience. That this it's on page 26. Other women spoke out. What? It's red warning. Stop. Do not pass go. But then Cheryl continued. So true. What was I doing? It was flattering at first. I felt like Cinderella getting picked up by her prince. Instead of a big white horse, I had the extra long white limousine. Rather than the fairy godmother changing my wardrobe into something fancy, I had LM sending me outfits and stylists. Now, here's the thing. As he's going out throughout this journey, he then starts to be able to get questions from her. What is your intent on dating me, right? And then, of course, him giving her instructions. I want to stop there, though, Dr. Bellman, as we talk about this. Adrienne says she remembers reading that. Let's talk about Cheryl. How did Cheryl come to you, the character that ended up falling for LM?
Because I think it was important to demonstrate the fact that on the outside, this person looks very well put together. She's very
Mhm.
successful, does her job well. She seems like she has everything together. But as we see when this relationship unfolds, she didn't quite have it all together. And that was important to show that that's the assumption a lot of women make about themselves, that all of these other ducks are in a row, but they neglect to really examine their own hearts. And so she showed a lot of weakness in her approach to this relationship. Because remember,
Yeah,
the very first time he told her not to say anything once they get into
right.
the event, that should have been a red flag to her, and it wasn't.
Mhm. Right. And that's what was interesting to me as a guy reading this, Dr. Velma. It was two things came to my mind. And again, this is gonna some people may disagree with this, but this is I'm just talking about
You
myself
go
as a reader.
ahead.
So first thing is this is the mistake I think so many men and women make about thinking they can change a person, but also judging a person based on what they do and what they have.
Of
Because
course.
looking on the outside, you would think Cheryl and LM would be great together, right? I
On
mean,
the
both of them
outside.
look like they had right. They look like, and that's what society kind of tells us, right? You want
Mhm.
somebody who has what you have or more, and they should be able to do this for you and do that for you. And as Cheryl, that's why I wanted to read that part. According to Cheryl, that was what she had.
Right.
But it's what she didn't have that was the most important. So I want to talk about that conversation, what it's been like for you as readers, Dr. Velma, because this is a real thing today that people, men and women, not just women. I know some of my guys friends, they feel like, hey, she has to have this and that, or we can't be together, and then and
Right.
then she has a place. Some people feel like they have a place, for the lady in their life. What was it like for you to kind of show the dynamics that all that glitters is not always gold?
Because it's not necessary. We focus our attention on the wrong things. And that was the whole
Yeah.
idea. And the other thing that I thought about when I did my research for Cheryl's character and the other character, Sherilyn, I
Mhm.
found out that there's a syndrome among professional women. And it's very much like what you said earlier. It is that if I work hard and put in the work, then I can get this to turn around. Well, that works on the job, but it doesn't work in relationships. And I think in many of the cases, both with Sherilyn and with Cheryl, they thought that was what was going to happen. And this man made it very clear. When you think of narcissism, it's the focus is always on him. Yes, he was a professional ball player. Yes, he made a lot of money. All of that, all of those things were true. But he focused on himself. It didn't matter if Cheryl was with him or not. He still wanted all the attention to be placed on himself.
Yeah, exactly. I want to say for those who are just coming in, and I appreciate you guys over on the Amazon side as well. For those who are just coming in, welcome. You all are watching Cyrus Webb Presents here on Amazon Live, but we are simulcasting this on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, and on Twitter or X. We're talking to Dr. Velma Bagby again today. She's the best-selling author of the Catch series. We're focusing on book number 2 in the series today, The Wrong Catch. If you missed last week's episode, we talked about the first book, The Catch No One Wants. Here on Amazon, if you look down below this episode, you'll see the previous episode that we had with Dr. Velma. So you can go back and watch that. But we're talking to her about the writing of the second book in the series. I want to bring up something that was in chapter 2 of the book. And that is the response that people had to hearing the experiences. Dr. Velma, on page 31, you write this. One woman told the group, "I don't know about you, but I heard a lot of good stuff this morning. I'm embarrassed to admit my dating mistakes and my failure to not practice any form of dating protocol. How can I be a woman of faith and date so badly? I had no proper approach to dating and was just winging it. That's all I knew to do." And this is the thing that got me. How dangerous was that?
Yeah.
I want to talk about that because here's where the truth part comes in, Dr. Velma. As we are talking about a novel, there is real world consequences.
Oh, yes.
So talk to us about that and what it's been like for you to have conversations with women about dating protocol and what they should and should not be expecting.
Well, because we're still practicing high school dating, and that level of dating does not work well as for adults. It just doesn't, especially those who are serious about discovering the mate that God has for them. So high school dating is just that. It's just taking whatever risks you choose you want to make with an individual without even taking into consideration who this person really is. I mean, we've heard so many tragedies, even in the news. And about the time I was writing this book, what was on my heart was what happened to the young lady that was on the news, that there were many cases where she could have been rescued from this bad relationship and nobody did. And then she ended up killing herself and the guy killed himself. So, and I've heard other stories here in California. And it was important for me to say that in there, that dating is not as simple as we think it is. We're not in high school where we get to have our parents and father and mother to help interject if they see something wrong about the guy, any of that. But as adults, we have to be very careful and make sure we're practicing, just really doing our due diligence and examining who this person really is.
Yeah. I want to step back from the story for a second and talk about Dr. Velma, the author, for a moment. Because again, Dr. Velma, a lot of people got to know you for writing nonfiction. We talked briefly about this last week. But I thought talk to us about what it's been like for you to experience what is really a new career, as it were, as a Christian fiction author, something that was not in the plans for you initially. No. What has that been like for you to embrace?
It's been really exciting for me, especially after that first book. Once I started getting the responses from all the readers who said, "No, please make sure you write some more books about the fish. We need more fish analogies." And then a lot of the interviewers who said, "I dated all these fish." That just really let me know that I was on the right track with what I was writing and my approach to writing in this new genre. And I really like it. I'm at home in Christian contemporary fiction because I can do that. Write exactly the stories that I think people need to hear, where people can discover what they need to know about dating life. It's important.
Exactly. Jennifer, hello to you. Jennifer says hello, Dr. Velma. Jennifer Copeland's joining us on Facebook. Last thing I want to talk about, because as always, Dr. Velma, the time gets away from us here. But but look, I was on with someone the other day, and Dr. Velma we had gone 28 minutes. I said, "Is it over?" And I said, "Yeah, that's it."
Right. Like, that's exactly what happens.
Yeah, that's exactly what happens. Chapter 4 of the book, Dr. Velma. I want to talk about Muskie for a second, because I thought this would be a good bookend after talking about Cheryl and what she went through with LM. Muskie and what Muskie had to say, and this is what I want to read from pages 90 and 91.
Okay,
and it kind of goes to the whole capturing also the title of this book as well. This is what, of course, was said by Muskie. "Let me begin by admitting I'm one of the worst of the offenders among the men Pastor Grayson instructed you to avoid in terms of the theme for this conference. The wrong catch definition described me for a long time, and I stand before you a guilty man because I was awful in my relationships." So I want to talk about that for a second, because I keep wanting to go to redemption, because I think it's unfair to say, a bad guy is always a bad guy. A bad lady is always a bad lady, because people can change if
It's your
they
fault.
want to make those changes. And this
Mhm.
is a great example for that. So talk to us about for you, Dr. Velma, what was it like for you writing the evolution of Muskie?
I just thought that it would be a perfect twist to the story, just like what you just said. People need to know that there are people who sincerely want to change and want to do better and want to establish a better reputation than what they've been accustomed to having. And his father, he mentions the fact that the entire family had that issue because remember, these are the elitists of the elitists in terms of fishing tournaments. So
Mm-hmm.
they all had that arrogance about them. And he decided to start working with Pastor Grayson and discovered how he could begin to work on himself. And that's why Pastor Grayson invited him. He was the only male speaker, by the way, besides Pastor Grayson. And it
Yeah.
shocked the women because they were ready to throw shoes or something at this man because they knew
Right.
his reputation, but they were shocked with his story.
Yeah. But this is the thing though, and this is again what might sometimes gets me in trouble with conversations with my friends, Dr. Bama. He did
Yeah.
not do this alone. He
No.
had help. And he says this actually, if I get to you reading by saying this about those women. And I thought this was so interesting. In my past
Mhm.
relationships, I thought control was my right. So I
Uh-huh.
manipulated the women to maintain the world I created. There was a time in my life when I did not consider how my control made women feel. But and yet on page 91,
Hmm.
he says this: as I look back on that season in my life, it looks awful, especially how the women allowed me to
Yep.
treat them like this.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I got used to it because they let me.
Uh-huh.
And I want to talk about this as we wrap up here, Dr. Van, about the danger for men and women of settling, because it goes to what we were saying with Cheryl and LM. A lot of
Right.
times, and we see this in movie and television shows, the mothers will tell their daughters, well, if he's providing for you, you look over that other stuff, or, if you find somebody that's good, yeah, you just overlook that other stuff. That's just part of it. How important is it for, as we
If he
kind of think
beats
about,
you only in the morning, as long
yeah,
as you can sleep well at night, that's
yeah.
crazy.
Yeah, but and that's the thing. We see this dramatized. Well, we know that is the life for a lot of
Yeah.
people. How important was it for you to have Muskie let them know? Okay, yeah, you can feel bad about me, but I didn't do this alone. Women like you all
Mhm.
let me be this person.
Yeah, that was important for me to present because this it's not the first time I've seen situations like this. I've
Hmm.
counseled people. I remember counseling a young lady who was in an abusive relationship and gave her what I thought she needed to get herself out of it. Wanted to help her in whatever way I could, but she disappeared and went right back to that guy. Never made contact again. So it's important. It was important for me to really express the importance of what women allow men to do. And a lot of it has to do with not understanding your own worth and valuing yourself better than that. And some women just don't. And
Hmm.
so, yeah, that was important to say that the women allowed him to do what he did.
Yeah. Adrienne says, when I'm working with women, I tell them that all the time. What are you allowing them to
Hmm.
do? And I think that's it. And again, not saying any of it is right,
Right,
but I think what happens so many times, people, because they're not ready to face their own stuff sometimes,
right,
they
right.
will then want to project everything on the other person. This is
Yeah,
what this person did to me. And they may have been doing that to you, but then the question becomes, why did you allow it?
yeah. It's kind of like the women who
Yeah,
say, "I keep attracting the same type of guy, the wrong guy." I said, "Well, that tells you right there. You need to pause and examine your heart. What is it about you that's attracting that kind of person?" So that
yeah,
says there's changes you need to make. And so, yeah,
exactly.
we need to not blame the other person. We need to really do a self-examination to determine what is it about me that's making this happen.
Exactly. It's such a great point. Dr. Bam, as we wrap up here, what is your hope for people who, once they read The Wrong Catch, of course, it sets up what our conversation will be about next week. The Wrong Catch, shall tear down the house. But what is one of the main takeaways you hope people take away from The Wrong Catch?
I think the main thing is many of the things we talked about, examining, looking at the stories, and hopefully finding some things that you can recognize about your own self. If not the exact stories, maybe the tips that were provided during the conference that you can take away for yourself. Because there's a lot of wisdom wrapped up in those stories that I think anybody can take away and use and apply in their lives. Because the hope is that they'll establish a healthy relationship and really discover that one for themselves.
Yeah, such a great point. Again, everyone, Dr. Velma Bagby has been our guest. She's the author of the best-selling Catch series. You guys can see the Catch No One Wants there. The Wrong Catch is here. And next week, we'll be talking about this book, her newest bestseller, The Wrong Catch. She'll tear down the house. So make sure you guys do join us for that. Also want to remind you, if you missed the first conversation with us talking about the Catch No One Wants, that kind of kicked all this off, as I mentioned, if you're joining us on Amazon, you all can look down below this video and you'll be able to see the previous video with Dr. Velma and myself. So make sure you guys go back, and keep in mind, after we wrap up next week, we're going to invite you guys to be able to share your thoughts about this series as we kind of do an overview of the whole series. So we definitely want you guys to be a part of that. Dr. Velma, how can our audience stay connected with you?
Well, I'm on all these social media platforms, so feel free to reach out, as well as subscribe to my website, drvelmabagby.com. So come on in and connect.
All right. Definitely invite you guys again to do that. Again, if you guys are new to us on the Amazon Live side, make sure you guys hit that follow button before we wrap up here. Again, it's either here in this corner or down below. Also, as I mentioned, you will see the paperback and Kindle editions of the Catch series. Feel free to be able to go ahead and get those. On Amazon, the Kindle editions are only 99 cents right now. So it's a great opportunity for you guys to be able to get those as you're getting ready to go into the weekend, give you guys some great reading. And then, of course, any questions or comments you have, you can join Dr. Velma and I here next week, same time, to be able to discuss it. Dr. Velma, always a pleasure. Looking forward to our next conversation together.
It was a pleasure for me too, Cyrus. Thank you.
More than welcome. And we thank you, our audience, for tuning in to another great segment of Cyrus Webb Presents. Until next time, I'm Cyrus Webb saying thank you so much for being with us. We will talk to you all soon. You take care.